Well, speaking of quarterbacks, Will, do you anticipate that they'll look to add someone after spring, or is that something that because they got Graham Mertz, of course, they brought in Max Brown as a young player, Jack Miller played sparingly last season, or do you think really that'll play itself out based on spring and who enters the portal after spring with the second portal window?
Now, I think based on what we saw with Jack Miller in the bowl game, based on the fact that we haven't seen anything from Max Brown yet, and based on really 3 years of history with Graham Mertz, they're going to bring somebody else in. If for no other reason, because even if Mertz were to beat him out, you would then have a backup that you had confidence in. Whereas right now, I mean, look, they didn't run Anthony Richardson, and granted, Jack Miller was hurt for a large portion of last year's run, but they didn't run Anthony Richardson very much last year at all. And the reason that was given is because they were concerned about who was behind him if he got injured. And every time Richardson ran, the Florida offense all of a sudden looked completely different. Obviously, Mertz is a different quarterback. He's not going to run that much, but you're also replacing 4/5 of your offensive line this year. They've got some transfers who are coming in who are going to be able to fill some of those holes and have been successful elsewhere as offensive linemen. But still, you replace 80% of your offensive line and your quarterback's going to get hit a few times. You better make sure you've got somebody, even if you think Mertz is the starter, you better bring in somebody behind him. And I'm not convinced Mertz is the starter. I think, Seth Varnador did a really nice job on YouTube of breaking down Mertz and what he does well and what he does poorly. And it's not necessarily that he doesn't have the tools; it's he doesn't do it consistently. And what I have found historically when I've looked at quarterbacks is when they don't do something consistently, that doesn't change. I mean, Jarrett Guarantano is a great example of that. He was somebody who had flashes of doing stuff great, but when you looked at the overall stats at the end of the year, when you looked at like key games and things like that, it was just it was frustrating. You're like, I understand why this guy's starting, but he's not going to take us to where we need to go. If you're a Kentucky fan, I think Florida's going to find that with Mertz. I think that's what Wisconsin found with Mertz, and so Florida's going to have to bring in somebody else. But again, is there anybody else out there after spring practice who fits a profile of more than just a backup quarterback? I don't know. It's going to really highly depend on who leaves. You think about it like a few years ago when Dwayne Haskins beat out Joe Burrow. Burrow played behind him that year and then transferred out. It's not the way it works anymore. So if there's a situation like that where a guy like Haskins beats out Burrow and Burrow's on the market, yeah, you go get a guy like that, right? And that's not just because Burrow turned into the star. It's because when you've got those two guys who are competing, one of them slightly beats out the other one. Hey, that guy's going to be available these days. And so, if he's available, you go get him. But, I guess I look at it and say they just need it from a numbers perspective. And that's the disturbing part, right? You'd like to be bringing in guys where you've got the numbers and you're bringing in somebody who's more talented and is going to push everybody. Right now, they're not in that situation. They want four quarterbacks, and right now they only have three. I'm not sure they would have gone out and gotten somebody if Rashada had stuck, but since he didn't, they'll probably go get somebody after the spring.
Now, you